The glass tower of Vertex Technologies cut into the San Francisco sky like a knife. 48 floors of power and privilege that seemed to mock her as she stood on the sidewalk, clutching a child's drawing in one hand and a visitor's pass in the other. Sarah Johnson wasn't supposed to be here. 3 years ago, she'd sworn never to set foot in this city again, much less in his building. But promises change when you become a mother. What's the most powerful secret you've ever kept? And how long could you hold it? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. You can do this, she whispered to herself, the cool October wind whipping her carefully straightened hair across her face. 3 minutes of courage. That's all you need. Inside her purse, her phone buzzed. A text from Letitia back in Birmingham. Did you make it? Are you going in? Her thumb hovered over the screen. If she answered honestly, she'd admit she was terrified. That the mere thought of seeing Marcus Reed again made her stomach twist into knots that no amount of preparation could untangle. That part of her wanted to run back to the airport and forget this crazy plan. Instead, she typed at the building now. Going in soon. Emma okay? The reply came seconds later. She's fine. Watching Frozen for the 10th time today. Stop stalling and get in there. Sarah smiled despite herself. Trust Letitia to see right through her. Her best friend had been the only person she'd told about that night 3 years ago. The only one who knew about the powerful CEO who'd spotted a 19-year-old temp server at a tech gala, pursued her relentlessly. And then, no, she wouldn't think about that now. Couldn't afford to let those memories paralyze her. Not when Emma's future hung in the balance. She looked down at her daughter's drawing. Stick figures holding hands beneath a rainbow. The word family, written in wobbly kindergarten letters. Emma had no idea why Mommy was taking a trip to California. No clue that the father she'd started asking about was about to get the shock of his privileged life. Sarah straightened her blazer, navy blue, chosen carefully to project confidence she didn't feel, and took her first step toward the revolving doors. The reflection that stared back at her from the glass wasn't the terrified teenager who'd fled this city in tears and shame. This was a woman now, 22, a mother, someone who'd worked 2 jobs while finishing her degree online, someone who'd survived. The lobby gleamed with marble and money, security guards with earpieces, employees with lanyards and purpose, visitors with appointments and aspirations. Sarah belonged to none of these groups. Yet today, she would make herself impossible to ignore. Welcome to Vertex Technologies. How may I help you? The receptionist's smile was practiced, perfect. I have an appointment. The lie came easier than expected. Sarah Johnson to see Marcus Reed. I don't see you in the system. The woman's smile remained fixed. Mr. Reed's calendar is fully booked today with the technology conference preparations. Of course it was. The annual Vertex showcase. The reason Sarah had chosen today of all days. 2,000 industry leaders, investors, and media representatives would be watching tomorrow when Marcus took the stage to unveil his company's latest innovation. 2,000 witnesses to what she planned to do. Please call up to his office. Sarah's voice didn't waver. Tell him I have information about the Birmingham project. No such project existed, but it would make him curious. Birmingham was where she disappeared to, where their daughter had been born. The receptionist's fingers tapped at her keyboard. A hushed phone conversation followed. Then, someone from executive services will be down shortly. Sarah moved to the waiting area, perching on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Around her, screens displayed Vertex's greatest achievements: medical technology, communication systems, clean energy solutions. The empire Marcus had built. The reason magazines called him the tech world's golden boy. The elevator dinged. A tailored suit emerged. Not Marcus, but one of his gatekeepers. Ms. Johnson, I'm David Chun, Mr. Reed's chief of staff. I understand you have information. Sarah stood, smoothing her skirt. Dull. For Mr. Reed only. He's in meetings all day preparing for tomorrow's showcase. Perhaps I can. Tomorrow's showcase is exactly why he'll want to see me today. She met his eyes steadily. Trust me, he doesn't want me sharing my information with the audience first. Have you ever stood at the edge of changing your life forever, knowing there's no going back once you take that first step? Would you have the courage to face the person who altered your entire future and demand they acknowledge what they did? The elevator doors opened again. David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shifting subtly. "Mr. Reed will see you now." His voice had cooled several degrees. 15th floor. Conference room B. Sarah stepped into the elevator, her heart hammering against her ribs. As the doors closed, she caught her reflection in the polished metal. And for just a moment, she saw the girl she'd been 3 years ago, wide-eyed and hopeful before everything shattered. She squared her shoulders. That girl was gone. The woman who stepped out of this elevator would make Marcus Reed remember her name. New York City, 3 years earlier. Sarah had never seen anything like it. The lights, the noise, the sheer velocity of life in Manhattan made Birmingham feel like a sleepy village in comparison. She'd won the trip in a scholarship essay contest, 3 days in the city, including a paid gig serving appetizers at a tech industry gala. Extra cash and networking opportunities, the coordinator had explained. Just wear black pants and a white shirt. They'll provide the vest and bow tie. What the coordinator hadn't mentioned was how the wealthy guests would look through the servers as if they were furniture. How the men's eyes would linger a beat too long. How one spilled drink could earn a complaint that might cost you the position. Keep circulating, the catering manager instructed. Smile, but don't engage unless they speak to you first. Sarah balanced her tray of champagne flutes, weaving between designer dresses and custom tuxedos. The ballroom of the Pierre Hotel glittered with chandeliers and promise. This was the world she aspired to. Not serving in it, but belonging to it. Her business management courses back home were her ticket, she believed. Work hard enough, be smart enough, and these doors would open. You missed a spot. She turned. A man pointed to a flute at the edge of her tray, where champagne had sloshed over the rim. "I'm so sorry, sir." She reached for a napkin. "I'm teasing." His smile transformed his face, no longer merely handsome, but magnetic. "Though your reaction tells me you take your work seriously." Admirable. He selected a glass, but didn't move away as the other guests did. "First time working one of these events? Is it that obvious? You're looking around like you're memorizing every detail." He sipped a champagne. Most veterans of these functions are counting the minutes until they end. Something about his focus made her feel both seen and exposed. He wasn't looking through her like the others. He was looking at her, really looking. "I'm Marcus." He extended his hand. "Sarah." She shifted her tray to shake it, feeling calluses that surprised her. This man worked with his hands somehow, despite the perfect suit and confident bearing. "Alabama?" he asked, catching her accent. She nodded, warmth creeping into her cheeks. "Birmingham. Long way from home. Student. Business management at UAB. I'm here on a scholarship trip." His eyes lit with interest. "Ambitious. I like that." A photographer approached, asking for a picture. Only then did Sarah realize who she was talking to. The whispers around them, the deference of the staff, the way people kept glancing over. Marcus wasn't just any guest. Marcus Reed, one more with your team, by the Vertex display. He was at Marcus Reed, founder and CEO of Vertex Technologies, the face on the tech magazines in her university library. "Duty calls." He handed her his empty glass. "Find me later? I'd like to hear more about your studies." She nodded, too stunned to form words. He'd been talking to her, interested in her thoughts. The night blurred after that. More trays, more guests, more practice smiles. But her eyes kept finding him across the room, commanding attention, moving with easy confidence among people twice his age. At 11, the catering manager released the first shift of servers. Sarah changed out of her uniform in the staff bathroom, planning to catch a subway back to her budget hotel. But as she crossed the lobby, a voice stopped her. "Leaving so soon?" Marcus Reed leaned against a marble column, jacket discarded, bow tie loosened. "More human than icon now. My shift ended," she explained. "The real party's just starting. Private gathering upstairs for speakers and sponsors." He gestured toward the elevator. You should join us. She hesitated. I'm not exactly on the guest list. You are now. He smiled. Consider it educational. Future business leaders should see how deals really happen. Everything about this screamed bad idea. She didn't know him. She'd be the only server among executives. She should go back to her hotel, call her roommate as promised, and get some sleep. Instead, she heard herself say, let me text my friend first. His suite took up half the top floor, already filled with the gala's inner circle. Investors, tech journalists, other founders. Sarah felt painfully out of place in her simple black pants and white shirt among designer evening wear. Champagne. Marcus handed her a crystal flute, already filled. I shouldn't. I have class notes to review tomorrow, and one glass. To celebrate your scholarship. She took it, their fingers brushing. That touch, brief, electric, would replay in her mind for months afterward. To breaking into new worlds. He clinked his glass against hers. She had no way of knowing then that her world wasn't being broken into. It was being broken apart. No way. Absolutely not. Letitia paced the small living room of Sarah's apartment, her shadow stretching across the worn carpet with each pass beneath the overhead light. You cannot seriously be considering this. Sarah sat cross-legged on the couch, Emma's sleeping form visible on the baby monitor beside her. Outside, Birmingham settled into night, streets quiet except for the occasional car passing through their working-class neighborhood. I've thought about it for months, Sarah said, her voice low to avoid waking her daughter. It's not some impulse decision. Flying across the country to confront one of the most powerful men in tech at his own showcase. That sounds exactly like an impulse decision. Letitia stopped pacing. You've worked so hard to build this life. Why risk it all now? It was a fair question. In 3 years, Sarah had transformed herself from a shell-shocked pregnant teenager into something resembling stability. Part-time administrative work at a local clinic. Online classes toward her degree. A tiny but clean apartment where Emma had her own bedroom, decorated with cloud decals Sarah had applied by hand. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Safe. Structured. Far from the chaos that had followed that night in New York. Because it's not getting better, Tish. Sarah gestured toward the stack of bills on her kitchen counter. The clinic's cutting hours again. Tuition's going up. Emma starts kindergarten next year, and after-school care costs more than I make some weeks. So, this is about money? You're gonna what? Demand child support? Sarah shook her head. It's not about money. Then what? How could she explain the weight she'd carried for 3 years? The way she flinched whenever Emma asked about her daddy. The nights spent staring at her ceiling, rehearsing confrontations that never happened. The shame that still clung to her like smoke, even though she'd done nothing wrong. It's about being seen, she finally said. He looked right through me that night, like I wasn't even human, just an inconvenience to be handled by his lawyers. And then when I tried to tell him about the baby, she swallowed hard. He didn't even remember my name. Letitia sat beside her, the anger in her expression softening to concern. And you think confronting him at his big showcase will make him see you? I think it'll make him unable to ignore me. Sarah reached for her laptop, opening the folder of meticulously organized documents. I've done my research. Vertex's board of directors will all be there. Investors, media. His entire reputation is built on being the ethical innovator, the visionary who puts people first. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Marcus Reed, champion of human-centered technology, who treated a human being like a problem to be eliminated. What exactly are you planning to do? Letitia asked. Sarah turned the laptop so her friend could see the conference schedule. There's a Q&A session after his keynote address. All I need is 30 seconds at the microphone. And if security stops you, or if they don't call on you. Plan B. Sarah pulled up another document. I've contacted 3 technology journalists who've written critically about Vertex before. If I can't speak at the event, they'll help me share my story. Letitia leaned back, studying her friend's face. You've really thought this through. I had to. For Emma. Sarah glanced at the monitor where her daughter slept peacefully, dark curls splayed across her pillow. She deserves better than secrets and half-truths. than watching her mother struggle while her father builds billion-dollar companies. What if he denies everything or countersues for defamation? I have proof. Sarah tapped another folder on her laptop. The hotel key card. Text messages. The settlement offer his lawyer sent when I told him I was pregnant. The settlement that had come with a non-disclosure agreement she'd refused to sign, even though the money would have solved every problem in her life. Because signing meant silence. Permanent, legally binding silence. Sweetie, Letitia's voice gentled. I know you've suffered, but this man has resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, PR teams, security. That's exactly why it has to be public, Sarah countered. His power comes from controlling the narrative. I'm just changing the venue from a private legal threat to a public question. The baby monitor crackled. Emma stirred, mumbling in her sleep. Both women paused, watching until the child settled again. What about her? Letitia nodded toward the monitor. Have you thought about what this means for Emma if it goes wrong? If it becomes a media circus? I've thought about what it means for her if I do nothing. Sarah's jaw tightened. Another decade of wondering why her father doesn't acknowledge her. Of watching me work myself to exhaustion to give her what other kids get without thinking. Of learning that powerful men can just walk away. Letitia was quiet for a long moment. When would you go? Next week. The day before the showcase. Sarah pulled up the flight she'd been eyeing. The cheapest option, a red-eye with 2 connections. I found a hotel within walking distance of the venue. Not fancy, but clean. And Emma, she'd stay with you if you're willing. I'd be gone 3 days max. Letitia sighed, the sound of someone who knew arguing was pointless. Of course she'll stay with me. But promise me one thing. What? If it gets dangerous, or if he threatens legal action you can't fight, walk away. Emma needs her mother more than she needs his recognition. Sarah nodded, though they both knew walking away wasn't in her nature. Not anymore. Not after 3 years of silence. The question hung between them, unspoken but heavy. Would confronting your abuser free you from your past, or entangle you more deeply in it? Book the flight, Letitia finally said. But we're not done talking about this. Sarah clicked purchase, her hand steady even as her heart raced. Somewhere in San Francisco, Marcus Reed was probably reviewing his showcase presentation, unaware that his carefully curated world was about to collide with the consequence he'd tried to erase. In 3 years, he hadn't given her a second thought. In 1 week, she'd make sure he never forgot her again. Sarah spent the next 7 days preparing for war. Not with weapons, but with words, with evidence, with the determination of someone who had nothing left to lose because everything had already been taken. Monday, she practiced her statement in front of her bathroom mirror, over and over until the tremor left her voice. Until she could say his name without her throat closing. Until she could hold eye contact with her reflection without blinking first. My name is Sarah Johnson. 3 years ago, I was working as a server at the Horizon Gala in New York when Marcus Reed invited me to an after-party in his hotel suite. Each time she stumbled, she started again. Each time tears threatened, she pushed them back. Emotion would make her look unstable. Facts would make her undeniable. Tuesday, she laid out potential outfits across her bed while Emma napped. Nothing flashy enough to suggest she wanted attention. Nothing so plain she could be dismissed as insignificant. She settled on a charcoal gray pencil skirt, a white blouse with a subtle pattern, and the only blazer she owned, navy blue, bought for job interviews at the campus career center. Professional. Forgettable. Until she spoke. Wednesday, legal research. Hours in the university library after her shift at the clinic, scouring case precedents and statutes. What could he sue her for? What offenses did she have? How much truth was legally protected? She couldn't afford a lawyer, but she could arm herself with knowledge. Pages of notes filled her binder, highlighted and annotated. If he threatened legal action, she wouldn't be caught unprepared. Thursday, the hardest part, telling Emma about the trip. Mommy has to go away for work for a few days, she explained as they colored together at the kitchen table. You'll stay with Auntie Letitia. Emma's crayon paused mid-stroke. Is it far away? California, where they make the movies. Will you bring me something? Sarah smiled, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. "Of course, sweet pea. When you come back, can we go to the park with the big slide?" First thing, Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat. Emma's world was so small, so manageable. A promise of the park was enough to make everything okay. Pinky promise? Emma held up her tiny finger. Sarah linked her own finger with her daughter's. Pinky promise. Later that night, after tucking Emma into bed, Sarah opened her laptop to the Vertex Technologies website. Marcus Reed's face stared back at her from the leadership page. Confident, polished, untouchable. Father of her child. Stranger in her life. Would he see the resemblance when she told him? Emma had his eyes, his dimple when she smiled. Little betrayals of genetics that Sarah noticed every day. Friday, financial calculations. The flight and hotel had drained her emergency fund. After setting aside rent money, she had exactly $126 for food, transportation, and unexpected expenses in San Francisco. She mapped walking routes from her hotel to the conference center to save on Uber costs. Researched which convenience stores were nearby for cheap meals. Checked if the hotel room had a mini fridge where she could store basics. This wasn't new territory for her. Stretching dollars until they screamed had become second nature after Emma was born. Saturday, rehearsal with Letitia, who played the role of hostile security, dismissive assistant, and finally, Marcus himself. "What if he says he doesn't remember you?" Letitia asked, arms crossed in her best executive stance. "I have photographs. What if he says it was consensual? I have the text where I said no to meeting him again. What if he offers you money right there to go away?" Sarah's answer was steady. "I'd say that acknowledging his daughter publicly isn't negotiable." Letitia dropped the role play, her expression serious. "Girl, I hope you know what you're doing." Sunday, packing. Each item carefully considered. Phone charger, portable battery, printed copies of key documents in case her phone died, a small photo of Emma tucked into her wallet, and one item she'd debated including, the hotel key card from that night. His suite number still visible on the paper sleeve, his hasty signature authorizing her access. The only physical evidence connecting them besides Emma herself. She slipped it into a side pocket of her purse. That night, she lay beside Emma in her small twin bed, breathing in the scent of baby shampoo and innocence. Tomorrow she'd be on a plane. In 48 hours, she'd be face to face with the man who'd altered her life's trajectory without a second thought. Would you rewrite your future by confronting your past? Would you risk everything safe and stable for the chance at something honest and whole? Sarah closed her eyes, one arm protectively around her sleeping daughter. In her mind, she saw herself standing before Marcus Reed, finally visible, finally heard. The alarm clock on her nightstand showed 11:57 p.m. In less than a minute, it would be Monday, the day her silence ended. The Vertex showcase took place in the grand ballroom of the Westfield Hotel, a space so opulent it made the Pierre in New York look modest in comparison. Crystal chandeliers hung from 30-foot ceilings. The walls featured hand-painted murals depicting San Francisco's evolution from Gold Rush Town to tech capital. Curved staircases descended from a mezzanine level, designed to make anyone walking down them feel like royalty. Sarah stood at the entrance, press badge hanging from a lanyard around her neck. Getting it had been surprisingly easy. A faked email address with a small local tech blogs domain, a few sample articles pulled together in WordPress, and $250 she couldn't afford for the independent media registration fee. The lanyard felt like a talisman, granting her access to a world that would otherwise keep her firmly outside. First Vertex showcase. A man in an expensive suit glanced at her badge as they moved through security. "Is it that obvious?" She tried to sound lighthearted. "You've got that overwhelmed newcomer look." He smiled. "Don't worry. First hour is just networking. Bar's free, but the real action starts when Reed takes the stage." She nodded her thanks, moving deeper into the ballroom. Around her, tech industry players mingled and posed, startup founders pitching to venture capitalists, journalists hunting for exclusives, influencers streaming live to their followers. The air buzzed with ambition and expensive cologne. Sarah checked the time on her phone. 9:15 a.m. Marcus wouldn't present until 11 o'clock. She had nearly 2 hours to get the lay of the land and to calm her racing heart. She'd expected to feel out of place here, but the reality hit harder than anticipated. Every person in this room seemed to belong in ways she never would. Their clothes spoke of success. Their postures radiated confidence. Their conversations referenced Stanford and MIT, series of funding and IPOs. A server passed with a tray of champagne. Sarah took a glass, but didn't drink, using it instead as a prop to look occupied. The server moved on without making eye contact, just as she'd done at the gala 3 years ago. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. "Are you with Benchmark?" A woman approached, her badge identifying her as Lauren Chun, director of product marketing at a company Sarah didn't recognize. "No, I'm independent." Sarah gestured vaguely with her press badge, covering hardware, software, human interest. Actually, the half-truth came easily. The people behind the technology. Lauren nodded approvingly. Refreshing approach. Too many outlets obsess over specs and miss the human stories. If you only knew, Sarah thought. Any particular focus for this event? Lauren asked. "I'm especially interested in Marcus Reed's presentation." "Aren't we all?" Lauren lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Word is they're announcing something revolutionary, possibly in medical tech. Stock's already up 12% on the rumors." Sarah's grip tightened on her champagne flute. Medical technology. Of course. Marcus had built his fortune on systems that saved lives, all while ignoring the life he'd helped create. "Have you met him?" she asked, striving for casual. "Reed, I mean, a few times at industry events. Brilliant, but intense. Not much for small talk." Lauren glanced toward the entrance. "Speak of the devil." Sarah turned, and the crowded room seemed to contract around her. Marcus Reed had arrived, flanked by an entourage of assistants and executives. At 32, he looked even more polished than he had 3 years ago. The successful startup founder had evolved into the confident industry leader. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, his posture commanding. When he smiled at a comment from someone beside him, the crowd around him visibly responded, leaning in as if magnetized. Sarah's chest tightened. In her mind, she'd reduced him to a villain, a two-dimensional figure who'd wronged her. Seeing him in person, charismatic, alive, moving through the world with easy authority, brought back unwanted memories of how it had felt when that focus was directed at her. When his smile had been for her alone. "Excuse me," she murmured to Lauren, setting down her untouched champagne. "I need to check something before the presentation." She retreated to a quiet corner near the mezzanine stairs, pulse hammering in her ears. This was why she prepared so thoroughly. Why she'd rehearsed her words until they became armor. Seeing him in his element only confirmed what she already knew. Marcus Reed lived in a world where actions rarely had consequences, at least not for men like him. From her vantage point, she watched him work the room. A handshake here. A laugh there, moving purposefully toward the VIP section cordoned off near the stage. He hadn't seen her yet. Wouldn't recognize her in this context, even if he looked right at her. To him, she'd been forgettable, disposable. Sarah took out her phone and pulled up the photo she kept hidden in a locked folder. Emma on her 3rd birthday 2 months ago, face lit by candle glow, dark curls framing her smile. Those eyes, his eyes, wide with wonder. The photo steadied her. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice, not really. It was about Emma growing up knowing she mattered enough to be acknowledged. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly, then brightened again, the 10-minute warning before the program began. Attendees started drifting toward their seats. Sarah tucked her phone away and headed for the press section, positioned with perfect sightlines to the main stage. As she settled into her chair, a woman in a Vertex staff jacket approached, clipboard in hand. "You're with..." She squinted at Sarah's badge. "Tech Culture Today," Sarah supplied smoothly. "Great. Are you planning to ask a question during the Q&A?" Sarah's pulse jumped. "Yes, actually." "Wonderful. We're pre-selecting to ensure a variety of outlets get represented." The woman handed her a small card. "Write your name, outlet, and question. We'll call on you if it's selected." This was it, the moment she hadn't prepared for. She planned to line up at a microphone after the presentation, not submit her question in advance where it could be screened and rejected. Would you lie to achieve justice? Would you reveal your hand early or hold your cards close? Sarah took the card, mind racing. The direct question she'd rehearsed would never make it past this screening. But what if? She wrote, Sarah Johnson, Tech Culture Today. Question from Mr. Reed. How does Vertex's commitment to ethical innovation extend to personal accountability among leadership? Vague enough to pass the screening. Pointed enough to open the door she needed. The woman collected the card, nodding. We'll let you know before the Q&A if you're selected. Sarah watched her move to the next reporter, then turned her attention to the stage where technicians made final adjustments to the lighting. In less than an hour, Marcus Reed would take that stage to reveal his company's latest innovation. He had no idea that the most significant revelation of the day wouldn't come from him, but about him. 3 years of silence were about to end, one way or another. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the ballroom. The Vertex logo appeared on massive screens flanking the stage, a stylized V that seemed to pulse with life, blue and silver against a black backdrop. Ladies and gentlemen, a disembodied voice announced, please welcome the founder and CEO of Vertex Technologies, Marcus Reed. The audience erupted in applause as Marcus strode onto the stage, confidence in every step. No notes in his hands. No teleprompter visible. Just a man who knew exactly what he was worth and expected everyone else to recognize it too. Good morning. His voice filled the room, warm and commanding at once. Thank you for joining us for our 5th annual Vertex Showcase. From her seat in the press section, Sarah studied him with the detached focus of someone cataloging evidence. The way he owned the stage, how the audience leaned forward when he paused, the casual authority in his gestures. When I founded Vertex 9 years ago, people told me I was chasing an impossible dream. He smiled, letting the audience in on the joke. They said medical technology couldn't be both cutting-edge and accessible, that we had to choose between innovation and affordability. Sarah's pen hovered over a notepad. She'd promised herself she would document everything, but found herself unable to write, transfixed by the surreal reality of being in the same room with him again. Today, Vertex Technologies save lives in 43 countries. Our monitoring systems have prevented over 8,000 cardiac emergencies. Our diagnostic tools have identified rare conditions that might otherwise have gone untreated. The screens behind him shifted to show patients, children, elderly, young adults, all smiling, all grateful. The narrative was clear. Marcus Reed was a hero, a visionary whose work mattered. But we're just getting started. His voice dropped, creating intimacy in a room of 2,000 people. Today, I'm honored to introduce you to the future of preventative care. The stage lights dimmed further. A spotlight remained on Marcus as he moved to the center of the stage. Every 18 minutes, someone in America dies waiting for an organ transplant. Every single day, 20 people run out of time before a matching donor is found. Images appeared on screen, hospital beds, waiting rooms, faces drawn with worry. But what if they didn't have to wait? What if the compatible organ wasn't in someone else's body, but could be grown from their own cells? A murmur rippled through the audience. Journalists straightened in their seats. Investors exchanged glances. For the past 3 years, Vertex has been developing technology that makes this possible. Marcus's passion was palpable, his hands moving as he spoke. Not in some distant future, but now. Today. 3 years. The timeline knocked the breath from Sarah's lungs. While she'd been bringing their daughter into the world, learning to soothe infant cries and change diapers with shaking hands, he'd been here, building this, moving forward as if she'd never existed. The stage transformed behind him. A cube-shaped device rose from below, sleek and white, about the size of a microwave. We call it Genesis. Pride filled his voice. The world's first commercially viable bioprinting platform capable of creating functional human tissue. The screens showed the device in action. A mechanical arm moving with precision, laying down layer after microscopic layer of cells. Then time-lapse footage of those cells growing, organizing, becoming something more. In clinical trials, Genesis has successfully created cardiac tissue that beats independently, liver tissue that filters toxins, lung tissue that exchanges oxygen. The audience was silent now, collectively holding its breath. The implications are nothing short of revolutionary. Organ failure will no longer be a death sentence. Transplant lists will become obsolete. Rejection risk will disappear because each organ will be grown from the patient's own cells. He paused, letting the magnitude sink in. And this isn't a concept or a prototype. Genesis has received preliminary FDA approval for cardiac tissue applications. The first human trials begin next month at 3 leading research hospitals. The room exploded with applause. People rose to their feet. Camera flashes popped throughout the ballroom. In the investor section, Sarah could see people already on their phones, likely calling brokers to buy more Vertex stock. Marcus raised his hands, acknowledging the response with practiced humility. Thank you. But the credit belongs to our incredible team of scientists and engineers who refuse to accept limitations. He gestured to a group in the front row, who stood briefly as the applause redirected to them. Sarah remained seated, her hands cold in her lap. The showcase continued around her. Technical specifications, market projections, testimonials from medical experts. But she processed none of it, caught in the undertow of a realization too bitter to swallow. Marcus Reed really was changing the world, saving lives, creating technology that mattered. And he discarded her without a second thought. The cognitive dissonance made her dizzy. How could the same person develop technology to save strangers while abandoning his own child? How could hands that designed life-giving machines also write checks to make unwanted problems disappear? We'll now take questions from selected members of the press, the moderator announced as Marcus's presentation concluded. When I call your outlet, please use the microphone in your section. Sarah's attention snapped back to the present. The Q&A. Her question. Her chance. First, we'll hear from the Wall Street Journal. A woman too rose ahead of Sarah stood, asking about regulatory pathways and timeline to full market availability. Marcus answered with polished expertise, never once consulting notes or hesitating. Next, from Bloomberg Technology. Questions about manufacturing capacity, intellectual property protection, competitive advantage. From Medical Innovation Today. Questions about clinical applications, patient selection criteria, cost structure. Sarah's palms began to sweat. What if they didn't call on her? What if her carefully worded question had been too suspicious? From Tech Culture Today. Her heart stopped, then raced ahead double time. She stood on legs that threatened to buckle, moving to the aisle where a staff member handed her a microphone. Your question, please, the moderator prompted when she didn't immediately speak. Sarah looked directly at Marcus, standing 20 feet away on his elevated stage. From this distance, she could see the exact moment his expression shifted from polite interest to something else. Not recognition, not yet, but awareness that this question might deviate from the script. Have you ever stood before someone who changed your life forever, while they stared back with no recognition in their eyes? How long would you wait for the light of memory to dawn? My question is about ethics. Her voice sounded stronger than she felt. Mr. Reed, you speak passionately about saving lives and taking responsibility for people in need. She paused, and the silence stretched uncomfortably. The moderator shifted, clearly wondering where this was going. Is there a specific question? He prompted. Yes. Sarah took a breath. Mr. Reed, how does Vertex's commitment to ethical innovation extend to personal accountability among leadership? Marcus's brow furrowed slightly, a calculated response forming behind those eyes she knew too well, because her daughter had inherited them. Vertex holds itself to the highest ethical standards at every level, he answered smoothly. Our leadership team undergoes rigorous compliance training, and we've implemented industry-leading transparency measures for all our operations. Corporate speak. Empty words. That doesn't answer my question. Sarah's grip tightened on the microphone. I'm asking about personal accountability, specifically yours. The moderator stepped forward. I'm afraid we need to move on. Do you remember me, Marcus? The formal pretense slipped away, her voice trembling slightly. New York, the Horizon Gala. 3 years ago, the ballroom, moments before buzzing with excitement about medical miracles, went utterly still. 2,000 people held their breath. Cameras turned from the stage to focus on her. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Reed looked at Sarah Johnson and truly saw her. Security, please escort this person out. The moderator's voice cut through the tension. But Marcus raised his hand, stopping the security guards who had started moving towards Sarah. His expression revealed nothing, a mask of professional calm that only someone who knew him intimately might recognize as forced. It's all right, he said, his voice carrying through the sound system. MS. Johnson, Sarah supplied, the name landing between them like a challenge. Sarah Johnson. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, so brief that most in the audience would have missed it. But Sarah saw. After 3 years of rehearsing this moment, she was attuned to every micro-expression, every tell. He remembered her now. Ms. Johnson clearly has strong feelings about corporate ethics, Marcus said smoothly. While this isn't the forum for a detailed discussion, I appreciate her passion. Perhaps my team can arrange a more appropriate time to address her concerns. Damage control. Redirect. Minimize. Sarah had expected nothing less. I don't need a private meeting, she replied, aware of phones recording throughout the ballroom. I've already had one of those with you. That's why I'm here. Murmurs rippled through the audience. In the front row, Vertex executives exchanged concerned glances. A woman in a tailored suit, likely the head of PR, was already typing frantically on her phone. We'll take the next question, the moderator interjected, gesturing for another staff member to approach Sarah for the microphone. 3 years ago, you invited me to your hotel suite after the Horizon Gala, Sarah continued, refusing to release the microphone. I was 19, working as a server. You were 30, the CEO who could make or break careers with a word. The murmurs grew louder. Camera flashes intensified. Marcus's expression hardened almost imperceptibly, the only sign that her words had penetrated his carefully constructed facade. MS. Johnson, this is inappropriate, the moderator said firmly. Security. What's inappropriate, Sarah raised her voice slightly, is using power to take advantage of someone, then erasing them when there are consequences. A security guard reached her, hand extended for the microphone. Sarah stepped back, clutching it like a lifeline. I have a daughter, she said, eyes locked on Marcus. She's 3 years old. Her name is Emma. The words hung in the air. Someone gasped. A journalist in the row behind Sarah was already typing, likely live-tweeting the unfolding drama. Marcus stood frozen on stage, a muscle working in his jaw. For a fraction of a second, his mask slipped, confusion, then calculation, then something that might have been fear flashed across his features. I try to tell you, Sarah continued, voice steadying as she found her rhythm. I called. I emailed. Your lawyer sent me papers to sign away my rights. Our rights, in exchange for money and silence. The security guard hesitated, glancing toward the stage for direction. The moderator looked equally uncertain. This had veered far beyond the typical PR crisis management scenario. Marcus finally moved, stepping closer to the edge of the stage. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, measured. Ms. Johnson, I understand you're upset. These are serious allegations that shouldn't be addressed in this public setting. My team will be happy to meet with you privately. I don't want privacy, Sarah interrupted. I've had 3 years of privacy, of secrets, of watching you accept awards for humanitarian innovation while ignoring your own child. The tension in the room was electric. Media members were openly recording now, ethics guidelines about consent temporarily forgotten in the face of breaking news. Investors whispered urgently to each other. Marcus's executive team had formed a tight huddle at the side of the stage. You claim Vertex stands for ethical leadership, Sarah said, her voice now carrying easily in the silent room. You just announced technology that will save parents from losing their children. Meanwhile, You've never once asked about your own daughter, never seen her face, never heard her laugh. The security guard's hand closed around her arm, gentle but firm. Ma'am, I need you to come with me. Sarah didn't resist, but she kept her eyes on Marcus. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking you to acknowledge her, to admit she exists, to be the ethical leader you claim to be. As the guard began guiding her toward the exit, something shifted in Marcus's expression. The calculated CEO veneer cracked, revealing a glimpse of the human beneath. Wait. His voice echoed through the speakers, stopping the security guard mid-step. Let her stay. The audience collectively inhaled. This wasn't in the crisis management playbook. Marcus turned to the moderator. We're taking a 15-minute break. Please ask everyone to remain in the ballroom. Without waiting for a response, he stepped off the stage and strode directly towards Sarah, flanked immediately by two members of his executive team who moved with the practiced urgency of people accustomed to emergency damage control. Conference room, he said tersely to one of them. Now, the security guard released Sarah's arm, looking to Marcus for confirmation. Ms. Johnson will accompany us, Marcus said, not quite meeting her eyes. Voluntarily. It wasn't a question, but Sarah nodded anyway. This was what she'd wanted, his full attention, his recognition that she couldn't be ignored any longer. As they moved toward a side door, the ballroom erupted in speculative chatter. Cameras followed their exit. Journalists shouted questions that went unanswered. Marcus, we need to issue a statement immediately. One of the executives, a silver-haired man with a crisis manager's unflappable demeanor, said urgently, the stock will start dropping within minutes. Not now, James. Marcus's voice was tight. The board will be calling. I said not now. They entered a small conference room off the main corridor, the door closing behind them with a definitive click. Sarah stood just inside, suddenly hyper-aware of her breathing, her posture, the fact that she was now closed in a room with the man she'd spent 3 years alternately fearing and rehearsing confronting. The executives remained near the door. Marcus moved to the far side of the conference table, maintaining physical distance between them. When he finally looked directly at her, his eyes were cold with controlled fury. You have contacted me privately, he said. Instead, you chose to ambush me in front of my investors, my board, and the media. Sarah met his gaze steadily. I tried private. You ignored me. I get hundreds of messages daily. Your lawyer didn't. He responded quite quickly with that settlement offer and NDA. Marcus's jaw tightened. A standard legal response to an unverified claim. Unverified? Sarah reached in her bag, withdrawing her phone. She pulled up a photo of Emma and placed it on the table, sliding it toward him. Look at her and tell me she needs verification. When was the last time you saw someone's world shift on its axis? The moment when certainty crumbles and new realities rush in? Marcus stared at the phone, at the little girl with his eyes, his dimple, his dark curls. The blood drained from his face. Her name is Emma, Sarah said quietly. And in about 10 minutes, the whole world is going to know she's your daughter. The aftermath happened in accelerated time, like a movie on fast forward. Marcus barking orders to his team. PR representatives materializing from nowhere. Legal counsel appearing via rushed video conference. The conference room transforming into a war room where Sarah, the presumed enemy, sat at the eye of the storm. We need paternity confirmation before any statements, the lawyer said, his face stern on the tablet screen. We need an immediate press release acknowledging the allegation, but emphasizing nothing is proven, the PR director countered. We need to end the showcase right now and reschedule, the silver-haired executive insisted. Marcus stood at the head of the table, one hand pressed to his temple, the other still holding Sarah's phone with Emma's photo displayed. He hadn't spoken in several minutes, letting his team debate strategy around him. The stock's already down 8%, someone reported, eyes on their laptop. Twitter's exploding. Hashtag Vertex Love and hashtag Vertex Daughter are trending. Sarah watched it all with a strange detachment. She'd set this machine in motion, but now it ran on its own power beyond her control. The carefully rehearsed confrontation had happened. The truth was out. What came next wasn't up to her anymore. "Everyone out," Marcus suddenly ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Except Ms. Johnson." Protests erupted immediately. "Marcus, we need to coordinate. The board chairman is calling. Without legal present, anything you say could." "Out." His tone left no room for argument. They filed out reluctantly, casting suspicious glances at Sarah as they went. The door closed behind them, leaving her alone with Marcus for the first time in 3 years. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken accusations and questions. "You could have destroyed me privately," he finally said. "Why do it publicly?" "Because this isn't about destroying you." Sarah kept her voice level. "It's about Emma. About making sure you can't erase her existence the way you tried to erase mine." He looked down at the phone in his hand, still showing Emma's smiling face. "She has my mother's eyes," he said quietly. The observation, so personal, so unexpected, caught Sarah off guard. For 3 years, she'd imagined him as a callous monster. This moment of human recognition didn't fit the narrative she'd constructed. "Yes," she managed. "She does." Marcus set the phone on the table between them, then sank into a chair. Without the stage, without his team, he suddenly looked exhausted. Human. "I don't remember much about that night," he admitted. "I was drinking heavily during that period, making bad decisions. That's not an excuse." "No, it's not." He met her eyes directly. "But it's the truth. I genuinely don't recall most of our interaction." The words stung more than Sarah had anticipated. She'd been an unremarkable blip in his life, forgettable, while he'd altered her entire existence. "You remembered enough to have your lawyer send me papers when I told you I was pregnant." His expression darkened. "I get paternity claims regularly. The legal team handles them as standard protocol. I wasn't a claim. I was a person you'd been with. One of many during that time." He said it matter-of-factly, not as a boast, but as a bleak admission. "I was not in a good place after my divorce." Outside the conference room, they could hear the muffled sounds of crisis management in progress. Urgent voices, phones ringing, doors opening and closing as people rushed between rooms. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, the question direct and businesslike. "Money? Recognition? A job? What would make this go away?" "I told you already. I want you to acknowledge her. Publicly. Without paternity testing? That's not reasonable." "Fine." Sarah crossed her arms. "Test. But when it confirms what I already know, I want more than a press release or a quiet child support arrangement. I want Emma to grow up knowing her father didn't reject her, that he accepts responsibility." Marcus leaned back, studying her with the calculated assessment of someone accustomed to negotiating high-stakes deals. "And what would that look like exactly? Weekend visits? Holiday cards? My name on a birth certificate? That's for you to figure out. I'm not asking you to marry me or even to love her. I'm asking you to be honest about her existence." A sharp knock interrupted them. The door opened without waiting for response, and the PR director stepped in, her expression grave. "I'm sorry, but we have an immediate situation." Someone in the ballroom recorded everything. It's already on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Major tech sites are running stories. She placed her tablet on the table, turning it so they could both see. The screen showed a shakily filmed video of Sarah at the microphone, her voice clear. "I have a daughter. She's 3 years old. Her name is Emma." The clip cut to Marcus's face as he registered her words, then to the chaos that followed. The comments section below the video was already filling with reactions ranging from support for Sarah to vicious attacks on her character. "We need a statement now," the PR director urged. "The board chairman is demanding an emergency meeting. Investors are calling." The Genesis announcement is completely overshadowed. Have you ever watched your private pain transform into public spectacle? Seen your most personal truths become trending hashtags? Marcus stared at the video, then at Sarah, something shifting in his expression. "Draft a statement acknowledging that Ms. Johnson and I had a brief relationship 3 years ago," he said finally. "Say that I've just learned about the possibility of a child and am taking immediate steps to confirm paternity. If confirmed, I will take full responsibility as a father." The PR director blinked in surprise. That's unusually direct. It's the truth, Marcus replied. And at this point, anything less will only make it worse. After she left, Marcus turned back to Sarah. This isn't how either of us wanted this to happen. But it's done now. Sarah nodded slowly. The confrontation she'd rehearsed for months had veered into unpredictable territory. She'd wanted recognition. She'd gotten a media firestorm. What happens next? She asked. Honestly, a humorless smile touched his lips. Chaos. The Westfield Hotel's executive suite wasn't what Sarah had expected for the most important conversation of her life. Too formal, too polished. The kind of room where business deals were struck, not where parents discussed their child's future. 6 hours had passed since her public revelation. 6 hours of rapid-fire developments that left her dizzy. Marcus canceling the remainder of the showcase. A DNA testing company arriving to collect samples from both of them. Vertex's stock dropping 17% before trading was temporarily halted. #VertexBaby trending nationwide. Her phone filling with messages from reporters offering money for exclusive interviews. Now she sat across from Marcus at a marble conference table, legal representatives on either side. Her lawyer, arranged and paid for by Marcus in a gesture she wasn't sure was courtesy or strategy, had advised her not to speak without guidance. Let's begin, Marcus's attorney said, a hawk-faced woman whose Rolex probably cost more than Sarah's annual income. We're prepared to offer a generous settlement that will provide for Ms. Johnson and the child, contingent upon DNA confirmation. Emma, Sarah interrupted. The child has a name. Emma. The attorney nodded without warmth. For Emma, then, we propose a monthly support payment of $20,000, a fully funded college account, and comprehensive health insurance. Sarah's lawyer, a kind-eyed woman named Rebecca, whom she'd met only hours ago, placed a restraining hand on her arm. And in exchange, Rebecca asked, a standard non-disclosure agreement. Ms. Johnson would agree not to discuss her relationship with Mr. Reed or make public claims about paternity beyond an approved joint statement. Silence them. Again, just with more money this time. No, Sarah said flatly. Sarah, her lawyer cautioned. Let's hear the full offer before responding. I don't need to hear more. I didn't come here for hush money. She turned to Marcus, who had remained silent so far, watching the exchange with unreadable eyes. 3 years ago, your lawyer offered me $200,000 to go away quietly. I said no then. What makes you think I'd say yes now? Marcus leaned forward. Because this time I'm offering to be in Emma's life. Not just financial support. The statement caught her off guard. What does that mean exactly? It means I accept my responsibility if she's mine. It means I want visitation rights. It means I want to know my daughter. Sarah studied his face, looking for deception. Yesterday, you didn't even remember me. Today you want to be Father of the Year. I'm not claiming to be perfect, Marcus replied, an edge entering his voice. But I have a right to know my child. A right? Sarah's laugh held no humor. You forfeited any rights when you ignore my calls. When your lawyer treated our daughter like a potential lawsuit. I told you I don't personally review every legal threat that. She wasn't a threat. She was a baby. Rebecca touched Sarah's arm again, firmer this time. Let's maintain professional discourse. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, San Francisco continued its normal rhythm, oblivious to the drama unfolding 50 floors above street level. Marcus's attorney cleared her throat. Perhaps we should address the immediate concerns. The press statement needs to be finalized within the hour. The DNA results won't be available for several days. Until then, we need an interim agreement. What exactly are you proposing? Rebecca asked. A joint statement acknowledging the relationship, but emphasizing that paternity is being determined. Ms. Johnson agrees not to give interviews or make social media statements. Mr. Reed commits to taking responsibility if paternity is confirmed. Sarah's mind raced. She hadn't prepared for this phase of the confrontation, the methodical legal aftermath. In her rehearsed scenario, Marcus would either deny everything, making him the villain, or immediately acknowledge Emma, giving her the vindication she sought. This measured middle ground left her unbalanced. What about Emma? She asked. When would she meet him? The question hung in the air. For the first time, the reality of what she'd set in motion fully registered. This wasn't just about recognition or justice anymore. This was about her daughter potentially having a relationship with a father who'd been absent her entire life. I'd like to meet her as soon as possible, Marcus said quietly. But that should be handled carefully, with proper preparation. Preparation for what? For finding out her father didn't want her until he was forced to acknowledge her existence. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. Fair. Sarah's voice rose despite her effort to remain calm. Was it fair that I had to drop out of college to work 2 jobs while pregnant? Was it fair that I had to move back in with my mother, who barely spoke to me for months because of the shame? Was it fair that Emma has asked about her daddy since she could talk, and I've had to create stories because the truth was too painful? The attorneys exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the raw emotion disrupting their carefully orchestrated negotiation. Perhaps Mr. Reed and Ms. Johnson should speak privately, Rebecca suggested. Marcus nodded. I think that would be helpful. After the attorneys stepped out, the suite felt suddenly larger, the distance across the table more significant. Sarah fought the urge to fill the silence, to justify her anger, to make him understand what these 3 years had cost her. I don't expect you to believe this, Marcus finally said, but I would have done things differently if I'd known for certain about Emma. You didn't give me the chance to prove it to you. I know. He ran a hand through his hair, a surprisingly human gesture from someone who'd appeared so controlled on stage. I was in a dark place after my divorce. The company was struggling. I was drinking too much, making decisions I'm not proud of. That doesn't excuse. I'm not offering excuses. I'm trying to explain. He met her eyes directly. I don't remember most of the women from that period. It's not something I'm proud of. But I do remember parts of our night together. Your laugh. The way you talked about your dreams for the future. The unexpected admission threw her. This wasn't the cold, calculating CEO she prepared to confront. When your messages came, claiming pregnancy, my team handled it like they handled everything else that threatened the company's stability. I was barely functioning as a human being, let alone as a potential father. He paused. It was wrong. I was wrong. But I can't change the past. Have you ever prepared to hate someone only to find yourself face to face with their humanity instead? How do you hold on to righteous anger when the villain in your story shows themselves to be as flawed and complex as you are? What do you want now, then? Sarah asked, her voice softer than before. I want to meet my daughter. I want to take responsibility for her in every way, not just financially. He leaned forward. And I want you to give me the chance to prove I can be better than the man you met 3 years ago. Sarah looked out the window at the city below, buying time to organize her thoughts. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the buildings. So much had changed since morning. So much would continue to change, regardless of what they decided in this room. Emma asks about you, she finally said. Not you specifically, but her father. She wants to know why other kids have daddies, and she doesn't. Marcus's expression softened. What do you tell her? That her daddy lives far away. That he has an important job helping people. Sarah's throat tightened. I never wanted her to think she wasn't wanted, even if that meant lying. Thank you for that. His voice was barely audible. For not making her carry my mistake. The words hung between them. An acknowledgement, however indirect, of the wrong he'd done. Not a full apology, but perhaps the beginning of one. The DNA test is just a formality, Sarah said. She's yours. Anyone who sees her would know it immediately. Marcus nodded slowly. I believe you, but the test will make it official. He hesitated. When it confirms what you've said, what happens then? What do you want our arrangement to be? The question was so practical, so forward-looking that it caught Sarah off guard. She'd been so focused on the confrontation, on being heard and acknowledged, that she hadn't fully considered the long-term implications. I don't know, she admitted. I hadn't thought beyond this moment. Then let's figure out together, Marcus said. For Emma's sake. The next morning found them in the same suite, but the atmosphere had shifted. Gone was the raw confrontation of yesterday, replaced by something more measured. A fragile truce built on mutual exhaustion and the sobering reality of what came next. Sarah had barely slept, spending most of the night fielding texts from Letitia, who reported that news of the Vertex confrontation had reached Birmingham. Neighbors were calling. Old classmates were messaging. Even Sarah's mother had received questions at her church group. The bubble of privacy she'd built around Emma was collapsing, and she hadn't been there to shield her daughter from it. "We need to establish clear boundaries," Marcus said, sliding a tablet across the table with bullet points already organized on the screen. Always the CEO, approaching parenthood like a business problem to solve. Sarah scanned the document. It outlined a preliminary co-parenting framework, regular video calls until in-person visits could be arranged, shared decision-making on major life choices, mutual respect, and positive communication about each other to Emma. "This is comprehensive," she said, surprised by the thoughtfulness behind it. "I had my assistant research best practices for introducing absent parents." He didn't flinch from the self-description. "There are protocols that minimize trauma for the child." Protocols. Best practices. The clinical language should have bothered her, but Sarah found it oddly reassuring. Marcus was approaching fatherhood with the same meticulous attention he gave his business. It might not be warm or intuitive, but it was serious. "Emma isn't a business project," she said anyway, feeling she should push back on principle. "No, she's more important." His response was immediate, "Which is why I'm not leaving anything to chance." Sarah continued reading through his proposed framework. Most of it was reasonable, even generous. The financial provisions went beyond what any court would mandate. The visitation schedule respected Emma's need for stability while gradually increasing time with Marcus. "You've thought this through," she acknowledged. "I've had about 12 hours to process becoming a father," he said, a hint of dry humor in his voice. "Creating structure helps me manage change." They worked through the document point by point, negotiating terms like diplomatic representatives from opposing countries. Sarah insisted on maintaining primary custody in Birmingham. Marcus countered with a proposal to fly them to San Francisco monthly at his expense. Sarah pushed for therapy support for Emma during the transition. Marcus agreed immediately, adding that he would attend parenting classes. By noon, they had hammered out a temporary agreement that would evolve once the DNA results confirmed what both now accepted as fact. "There's still the public aspect to address," Marcus said, closing the parenting document and opening another. "The statement will go out today. We need to agree on language." The draft his PR team had prepared was carefully worded, acknowledging the relationship and potential paternity while emphasizing Marcus's commitment to doing the right thing if confirmed. It painted him as responsible and forthright, turning a potential scandal into a redemption narrative. "This makes it sound like you're some kind of hero for acknowledging your own child," Sarah observed. "Would you prefer I be portrayed as a villain?" "I prefer honesty." Marcus considered this. "What would you add?" "That you initially didn't respond to my attempts to contact you. That it took a public confrontation for you to acknowledge the possibility." He frowned. "That undermines the entire message we're trying to convey about responsible co-parenting moving forward. It's the truth. The truth is more complicated than that," he countered. "And exposing Emma to a public narrative where her parents are in conflict serves no one, least of all her." He had a point, however self-serving. The goal wasn't to punish Marcus anymore. It was to create a stable foundation for Emma. "Fine sarà conceded. But I want language that makes it clear this isn't just about money, that you're committing to being present in her life." Marcus nodded, making notes on the tablet. "I can work with that." As he revised the statement, Sarah watched him, the focused intensity, the precision of his movements. The same qualities that had built a billion-dollar company were now being applied to the messiest of human situations. There was something almost admirable in his refusal to be overwhelmed. "I need to ask you something," she said when he finished typing, "and I need complete honesty." He looked up, waiting. "Are you doing this because you want to know Emma, or because the public exposure forced your hand?" The question hung between them, cutting through the careful diplomacy they'd maintained all morning. "Both," he answered after a long moment. I won't pretend I would have sought this out if you hadn't forced the issue. But now that I know about her, he paused, seeming to search for the right words. I've missed 3 years. I don't want to miss any more. The simple admission contained more genuine emotion than all the carefully crafted statements and legal frameworks combined. Would you believe someone who hurt you when they say they want to change? Or would past actions speak louder than present promises? She likes butterflies, Sarah found herself saying, and strawberry ice cream. She hates having her hair brushed, but loves bubble baths. She can count to 20 but skips 16 for some reason. She asks why about everything. Marcus listened intently, hunger for these details evident in his expression. Tell me more, he said softly. And so Sarah did, opening the door to her daughter's world inch by careful inch, watching as the man across from her transformed from adversary to something not quite a partner, not quite a friend, but perhaps someday a father. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the arrivals area of Birmingham International Airport, Emma fidgeting beside her in a new purple dress chosen specifically for this moment. When is he coming, Mommy? Emma asked for the 5th time in as many minutes, her small hand warm in Sarah's palm. Soon, baby. His plane just landed. The DNA test had confirmed what Sarah had always known. Marcus was Emma's father, his genetic imprint unmistakable in their daughter's features and blood. The results had arrived 2 weeks ago, followed immediately by a flurry of legal documents, financial arrangements, and carefully negotiated plans for this first meeting. Will he like me? Emma's question cut straight to the heart of Sarah's own fears. Of course he will, she answered, smoothing her daughter's dark curls. Who wouldn't like you? The truth was, Sarah had no idea how Marcus would react to Emma in person. Over video calls this past week, he'd been awkward but attentive, clearly trying to connect with a child who viewed him as a fascinating stranger. Emma, for her part, had been shyly curious, peering at Mr. Marcus. They'd agreed to transition to Daddy gradually, through the screen with a mixture of wonder and uncertainty. There are so many people, Emma observed, watching the stream of travelers emerging from the security area. It's a busy day for the airport, Sarah agreed, her own eyes scanning the crowd. Then suddenly, there he was. Marcus Reed, dressed not in his usual tailored suit, but in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, pulling a small carry-on bag. He spotted them immediately, his stride faltering for just a moment before he continued forward. Sarah felt Emma press against her leg, suddenly shying now that the moment had arrived. Hello, Marcus said when he reached them, his voice oddly formal. His eyes moved from Sarah to Emma, lingering on his daughter's face with an expression of undisguised wonder. Sararabia akwali Steve. Good flight. Fine, yes. He seemed unable to look away from Emma. Hello there. Emma buried her face against Sarah's leg, but peeked out with one eye. Hi, she whispered. The airport bustled around them, travelers rushing past this small triangle of tension and possibility. Sarah had imagined this moment repeatedly over the past weeks, sometimes as a tearful reunion, sometimes as an awkward disaster. The reality was something in between, 3 people bound by biology and circumstance, trying to navigate uncharted territory. I brought something for you, Marcus said, kneeling to Emma's level and reaching into his bag. He withdrew a small stuffed butterfly, its wings iridescent purple, Emma's favorite color, which Sarah had mentioned during one of their planning calls. Emma's grip on Sarah's leg loosened slightly. For me, for you. Marcus held it out, careful not to move too close. Your mom told me you like butterflies. Emma reached for the toy, her caution melting into delight as she examined the sparkly wings. Thank you. You're welcome. His smile transformed his face, making him look younger, less guarded. Sarah watched the exchange with a complicated mixture of emotions. Relief that he'd remembered the detail about butterflies, wariness about his motives, and something unexpected, a pang of what might have been, had things gone differently 3 years ago. Should we head to the house? She suggested, pulling herself back to the present. Emma helped make lunch. I made sandwiches, Emma announced, her initial shyness receding. With the crusts cut off. That sounds perfect, Marcus replied, standing. I'm hungry after my flight. They walked to the parking garage, Emma between them, chattering now about her butterfly collection and how this new one would need a name. Sarah caught Marcus watching their daughter with an expression of bewildered joy, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. In the car, Emma insisted Marcus sit beside her in the back seat, a request that surprised both adults. He complied, looking comically large in the space next to her booster seat. Do you have a big house? Emma asked as Sarah navigated out of the airport. Marcus answered. It's in California. Does it have a swimming pool? Yes, actually. Can I swim in it sometime? Sarah tensed, catching Marcus's eye in the rearview mirror. They hadn't discussed visits to California yet, focusing instead on this initial meeting in Birmingham. If your mom says it's okay, Marcus answered carefully. Maybe someday. Mom, can I? We'll see him. That'll be a big trip. Emma accepted this with the easy flexibility of childhood, already moving on to her next question. Do you have any pets? No, Marcus admitted. I travel too much to take care of a pet. We don't have pets either. Mom says our apartment is too small. The simple observation highlighted the vast gap between their lives. Marcus in his California mansion with a swimming pool, Sarah and Emma in their two-bedroom apartment where a pet was an unaffordable luxury. Have you ever watched worlds collide in slow motion? Wondered how lives that developed separately could possibly mesh without breaking? At a stoplight, Sarah glanced back again. Emma was showing Marcus her light-up sneakers, her initial reserve completely gone. Marcus was listening with genuine interest, asking questions that delighted her with their seriousness. Small steps, small tests, small moments of connection that might eventually build something resembling family. As Sarah pulled onto their street, she allowed herself a cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, this impossible situation could work. By the third visit, they had established something like a routine. Marcus would fly in on Friday afternoon. Sarah would pick him up at the airport with Emma. They would spend Saturday together, usually at the park or the Children's Museum, and Sunday morning before his afternoon flight back to San Francisco. Today they sat on a bench at Railroad Park, watching Emma feed ducks at the pond's edge. October sunshine bathed the scene in golden light, transforming the ordinary moment into something that looked like a family vacation photo. She's getting more comfortable, Marcus observed, nodding toward Emma, who waved excitedly when a particularly large duck approached for breadcrumbs. She asked about you between visits now, Sarah confirmed. Wants to know when you're coming back. What you'll do together next time. The admission cost her something, an acknowledgement that Emma was forming an attachment to her father, one that existed independently of Sarah's own complicated feelings toward him. I've been thinking, Marcus said, his eyes still on their daughter. The back and forth is getting exhausting. For all of us. Sarah tensed. Here it came. The moment when he'd say visiting Birmingham was too inconvenient, when he'd start pulling back from the commitments he'd made so readily in San Francisco. I'm opening a Vertex research office in Atlanta, he continued. It's been in the planning stages for months, but I've accelerated the timeline. She turned to look at him, surprised. Atlanta? 2 hours from Birmingham by car. Close enough that I could see Emma every weekend if you're comfortable with that. Far enough that I'm not intruding on your daily lives. The thoughtfulness of the arrangement caught her off guard. You're moving your company's expansion plans for her. For all of us, he corrected. The constant flights aren't sustainable, and Emma deserves more than a father who drops in once a month. Sarah watched Emma, who had abandoned the ducks and was now examining something in the grass with intense focus. You'd really relocate for her? I missed 3 years, Marcus said simply. I don't want to miss any more. It was becoming harder to hold onto her anger in the face of his consistent efforts. Over the past month, Marcus had kept every promise he'd made. The financial support arrived like clockwork. He called Emma at the agreed-upon times, never missing a scheduled video chat. He'd even enrolled in a parenting class, sending Sarah the certificate of completion without being asked. Atlanta would be better, she acknowledged. Emma gets tired from excitement when you visit. More frequent, shorter visits might be easier on her. On you too, he suggested. I know this hasn't been easy. An understatement. While Emma had adjusted to Marcus's presence with the remarkable adaptability of childhood, Sarah found each visit emotionally draining. Every interaction required her to balance Emma's needs against her own complicated feelings toward the man who had dismissed her so completely 3 years ago. "I'm managing," she said. "You're doing more than managing. You're raising an incredible child." His voice held genuine admiration. "I see how much thought and care you put into every aspect of her life." The praise warmed her despite her determination to keep her guard up. "She makes it easy. She's a good kid. Because of you." He hesitated. "I've been meaning to say this properly, but the timing never seemed right. I am sorry, Sarah, for how I treated you 3 years ago, for not listening when you tried to tell me about the pregnancy, for leaving you to handle everything alone." The apology, direct, unqualified, hung in the air between them. "I was young and overwhelmed," she said finally, "but I handled it. We handled it. You shouldn't have had to." Emma ran up then, pink-cheeked and excited. "Mom, Marcus, I found a caterpillar. Come see." They followed her to a patch of clover where a fuzzy orange caterpillar inched along a stem. "It's going to turn into a butterfly," Emma explained seriously to Marcus. "But first it makes a chrysalis. We learned about it in school." "That's fascinating," he replied, matching her serious tone. "How long does it stay in the chrysalis?" "A long time. Weeks and weeks. And then it emerges completely transformed," Marcus mused. "A whole new life." Sarah caught his eye over Emma's head. Recognizing the metaphor wasn't lost on either of them. They too were in a process of transformation, painful and slow and uncertain, but moving toward something new. Later, after Emma had fallen asleep on the drive home, exhausted from the excitement and fresh air, Marcus spoke quietly from the passenger seat. "I have another proposal, one I've been considering for a while." Sarah glanced at him, then back at the road. "What kind of proposal?" "The Genesis technology we announced the day you confronted me? It's moving into clinical trials next month." I remember the life-saving innovation he'd unveiled just before she'd upended his carefully controlled world. "Many of the trial patients are children with congenital heart defects. We're partnering with pediatric hospitals across the country, including Children's of Alabama and Birmingham." She began to see where he was heading. "And they need someone to coordinate family support services. Someone who understands both medical administration and the perspective of parents with children in treatment." "Someone like me," Sarah said, connecting the dots. "With my clinic experience. The position pays 3 times what you're making now. Better benefits. Flexible hours to accommodate Emma's schedule." He paused. "And yes, it would involve working with Vertex. With me, indirectly." The offer was tempting, almost too perfect. "Is this a way to keep me close? To control the situation?" "It's a way to give you an opportunity you deserve," Marcus countered. "Your resume would qualify you regardless of our personal connection. The fact that it would make our co-parenting arrangement more stable is a bonus." Have you ever been offered exactly what you need at exactly the right moment, only to wonder if accepting means surrendering something essential about yourself? How do you separate opportunity from obligation? "I need to think about it," Sarah said as she pulled into her apartment complex. "This is a lot of change all at once. Take all the time you need." Marcus glanced back at Emma, sleeping peacefully in her car seat. "We've got nothing but time now." The Children's Hospital of Alabama gleamed in the morning sunlight, its colorful exterior designed to appear welcoming rather than clinical. Sarah stood outside the main entrance, coffee in hand, gathering herself before starting another day. 3 months had passed since she'd accepted the position with the Genesis trial. 3 months of learning new systems, meeting families desperate for the miracle Marcus's technology promised, building a role that hadn't existed before. 3 months of carefully navigated co-parenting, with Marcus now living part-time in Atlanta, visiting Birmingham every weekend. 3 months of watching Emma blossom under the attention of both parents, her initial shyness around Marcus replaced by comfortable familiarity. 3 months of Sarah's own walls slowly, reluctantly lowering. "Morning, Sarah." Dr. Kaplan, the trial's lead physician, approached from the parking garage. "Big day today." The board visit, she nodded. Everything's ready in the conference room. The Vertex Board of Directors was making its quarterly tour of the trial sites, evaluating progress and planning next steps. Which meant Marcus would be here, not as Emma's father, but as the company's CEO, accompanied by the powerful people who controlled Vertex's future. The preliminary results are encouraging, Dr. Kaplan said as they entered the building together. 2 of the younger patients are showing significant tissue regeneration. Trey Wilson's parents told me his energy levels have improved dramatically, Sarah added. They're calling it a miracle. Let's hope the board sees it that way. This trial isn't cheap. Sarah understood the stakes. The Genesis technology represented billions in potential revenue for Vertex, but the development costs were astronomical. The board had taken a significant risk approving the trials ahead of their original timeline. In the conference room, Sarah arranged folders containing patient progress reports, anonymized to protect privacy, but compelling in their early success. The door opened, and her heart performed its now familiar skip when Marcus entered. "Good morning," he said, professional but with a warmth in his eyes meant only for her. "Everything's set for the presentation?" "All ready." She handed him a folder. The latest results are impressive. Behind him, board members filed in, men and women in expensive suits who controlled Vertex's direction and, by extension, Marcus's ability to fund the trial. The meeting proceeded smoothly. Dr. Kaplan presented medical data. Sarah shared family impact assessments. Marcus guided the discussion with the easy authority that had first attracted her 3 years ago at the gala, until board member Thomas Whitfield cleared his throat during a pause. "There's an elephant in the room we need to address." The atmosphere shifted instantly. Marcus straightened. "Thomas, the personal connection between our CEO and the Family Services Coordinator," Whitfield continued, nodding towards Sarah. "Given the very public nature of how this relationship came to light, the board has concerns about appearances." Sarah's face burned. She'd known her hiring might raise eyebrows, but the trial structure meant she rarely worked directly with Marcus. Their professional interactions were limited and appropriate. "My personal life has no bearing on the trial's success," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Your personal life became company business when Ms. Johnson confronted you at our flagship event," another board member pointed out. "Vertex stock still hasn't fully recovered." "The stock dropped because I canceled the showcase," Marcus countered. "The technology speaks for itself. The trial results prove that." "Nevertheless," Whitfield pressed, "there are optics to consider. Having your daughter's mother employed by the company creates an appearance of impropriety." "She's qualified for the position," Marcus said flatly. "More than qualified. That may be, but—" "Excuse me." Sarah found her voice, steel beneath the polite tone. "I understand your concerns, but I'd appreciate not being discussed as if I'm not in the room." The board members turned to her with varying expressions of surprise. They weren't accustomed to interruptions. "My personal connection to Mr. Reed was disclosed during the hiring process," she continued. "My performance reviews are available for your examination. The families I work with have submitted feedback forms rating the support services. I'd be happy to recuse myself from this meeting if you'd prefer to discuss my employment without me present, but I won't sit here and be treated as a problem rather than a professional." Silence followed her statement. Marcus's expression remained neutral, but she caught the slight nod of approval. "No one is questioning your qualifications, Ms. Johnson," Whitfield said after a moment. "But surely you understand our position. The circumstances of your revelation about your daughter created significant disruption for the company. The circumstances were necessary because private attempts at communication were ignored," Sarah replied evenly. "But that's behind us now. We're focused on co-parenting our daughter and maintaining appropriate professional boundaries in this context." The tension in the room was palpable. Sarah's heart raced, but she kept her expression composed. She'd faced worse than disapproving board members. She'd faced being 19 and pregnant and alone. "Perhaps we should return to the trial data," Marcus suggested, his CEO voice firmly in place. "The patient outcomes should be our primary focus today." The meeting continued, the moment of confrontation passing, but not forgotten. Sarah participated professionally, answering questions about family support protocols and patient feedback. But she felt the undercurrent, the judgment, the speculation, the assumption that she'd manipulated her way into this position. After the board members filed out for a tour of the facility, Marcus hung back. "I'm sorry about that," he said quietly. "Not your fault." Sarah gathered her notes, keeping her hands busy to hide their slight tremor. They have valid concerns about appearances. Their concerns are short-sighted. You're the best person for this role, and the families love you. But I'm also Emma's mother. Your past mistake. His expression hardened. You and Emma are not mistakes. The simple declaration hung between them, too loaded to fully address in a conference room where board members might return any moment. "The board can't dictate who I hire," Marcus continued, "but they can make things difficult. I want you to be prepared." "For what?" "They might offer you a settlement to leave quietly. A significant one." The implications stung. "They think I can be bought off?" Again. "They think everyone has a price." His gaze was steady. "Do you? Have you ever been asked to choose between dignity and security? Between standing your ground and making life easier for those you love?" Sarah thought of Emma, thriving now with stable housing, good health care, and regular time with both parents. Of the families in the trial, desperate for the hope Genesis offered. Of her own hard-won professional confidence. "I like my job," she said simply. "I'm good at it. If the board wants me gone, they'll need to fire me for cause." A smile touched the corner of Marcus's mouth. "That's what I thought you'd say." As he turned to leave, Sarah called after him. "Marcus." He paused at the door. "Thank you for standing up for me in there." "Always," he replied, the word carrying more weight than professional courtesy could explain. The playground at Avondale Park filled with children's laughter as Saturday sunshine warmed the December morning. Sarah sat on a bench watching Emma navigate the jungle gym with Marcus spotting her from below, his hands ready to catch her if she slipped. For months since the board meeting, 4 months of subtle pressure from Vertex executives suggesting Sarah might be more comfortable in a different role away from the Genesis trial. 4 months of Marcus deflecting those suggestions while Sarah continued, proving her value through impeccable work. And 4 months of something shifting between them, something neither had acknowledged aloud. "Mom, watch me," Emma called from the top of the slide. "I'm going down backwards." "I see you, baby. Be careful." Marcus stood at the bottom, ensuring she landed safely. Sarah watched his hands catch Emma's shoulders as she reached the end of the slide, steadying her with practiced ease. The awkward, uncertain man of those first visits had evolved into someone who moved naturally in Emma's world, who knew which snacks she preferred, which bedtime stories she'd request, which playground equipment made her nervous. A father, not just biologically but functionally. He looked up, catching Sarah watching them. The smile he gave her wasn't the polished CEO smile from the Vertex showcase or the cautious smile of their early co-parenting negotiations. It was something more genuine, warm, and slightly questioning, as if he too was trying to understand what was happening between them. Emma ran to the swings, and Marcus joined Sarah on the bench. "She's fearless today," he observed. "She shows off when you're here." Sarah smiled. "Wants to impress her dad." The word still felt new in her mouth. Dad. Not Marcus or her father, but Dad. An acknowledgement of the relationship that had solidified over these months. "I have something to tell you," Marcus said after a moment. "About Vertex." Sarah tensed. "The board is insisting you fire me?" "No." He shook his head. "Nothing like that. Actually, it's about me." He paused. "I'm stepping down as CEO." The statement was so unexpected that Sarah wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. "You're what?" "Stepping down. Transitioning to Chief Innovation Officer instead." He watched Emma pump her legs on the swing, going higher. "The board will announce it next week. But Vertex is your company, your vision, and it still will be. But as CIO, I can focus on developing new technologies rather than managing quarterly earnings reports and shareholder expectations." He turned to her. "It also means I can move to Atlanta permanently. Be closer to Emma." The implication hung in the air, closer to Sarah too. This isn't because of the board's attitude about me, is it? She asked. It's because of Emma, he answered honestly. And yes, partly because of you. The board meeting was clarifying. I realized I've been letting Vertex define me for too long, using work to avoid the parts of life that matter more. He looked back at the playground where Emma had abandoned the swings and was now showing another little girl how to cross the monkey bars. I miss so much already. First steps, first words, first day of school. His voice held regret, but also determination. I don't want to miss anything else because I'm chasing stock prices or market share. Sarah studied his profile, seeing beyond the successful CEO to the man beneath. One who had made terrible mistakes but was genuinely trying to correct them. That's a big change, she said finally. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He hesitated. Except maybe that I want to be part of Emma's life. And if you're open to it, part of yours too. The statement hung between them, too significant to be misinterpreted. Marcus, I'm not asking for anything specific, he clarified quickly. Just openness to possibilities, to seeing where this goes. Sarah looked away, watching Emma play. The past year had transformed all their lives so completely that sometimes she barely recognized her own existence. From single mother struggling to make ends meet to co-parent with a steady job. From woman scorned to woman cautiously rebuilding trust. I don't know if I can, she admitted. Every time I start to trust you, I remember how easily you dismissed me before. How one call from your lawyer could have prevented years of struggle. I know, he didn't defend himself or offer excuses. And I can't undo that. All I can do is be different now. A child's cry from the playground drew their attention. Emma had fallen, skinning her knee. Both parents moved simultaneously, reaching her together. You're okay, sweetheart, Sarah soothed, examining the minor scrape. Does it hurt a lot? Marcus asked, kneeling beside them. Emma's tears slowed as she considered the question seriously. Medium hurt. Not big hurt. Medium hurt still deserve a bandage, Marcus said, reaching into his pocket for the small first aid kit he'd started carrying specifically for playground emergencies. And maybe ice cream after? Emma's face brightened instantly. Strawberry. Whatever flavor you want. Sarah watched as Marcus gently cleaned the scrape and applied a colorful bandage, his hands confident and gentle. This man who ran a billion-dollar company treated a child's minor injury with the same focused attention he gave to board presentations. People could change. She'd seen it happen before her eyes. There you go. Good as new. Marcus helped Emma stand. Still want to play? Or should we get that ice cream now? Play first, then ice cream, Emma decided, already eyeing the playground again. Stay where we can see you, Sarah called, as Emma limped dramatically for a few steps before breaking into a run, injury forgotten. As they returned to the bench, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and sighed. The board chair. Probably wants to discuss the transition announcement. You should take it, Sarah said. It can wait. He silenced the phone and returned it to his pocket. This is my time with Emma. With you. The simple priority, choosing them over work, shouldn't have meant so much. But it did. Have you ever stood at a crossroads, knowing your next choice might alter the course of multiple lives? How do you trust your heart when it's been wrong before? About what you said earlier, Sarah began carefully. About seeing where this goes between us. Marcus waited, giving her space to find the words. I'm not ready to make any promises, she continued. There's too much history, too many complications. I understand. But, she added, meeting his eyes directly, I'm not opposed to possibilities either. His smile started slow then spread, transforming his entire face. Possibilities are enough for now. Emma called from the playground, demanding they watch her latest feat of bravery. Together, they turned toward their daughter, a fragile bridge forming between past wounds and future possibilities. Spring arrived in Birmingham with an explosion of dogwood blossoms and new beginnings. 1 year since Sarah had stood outside Vertex headquarters with shaking hands and fierce determination. 1 year that had transformed 3 lives irrevocably. Sarah stood in her kitchen, her new kitchen, in the small house she'd purchased with Marcus's help 3 months ago. Emma had a backyard now, a treehouse, a bedroom painted purple with butterfly decals that Marcus had painstakingly applied himself, following her precise instructions with CO-level focus. Through the window, Sarah could see them in the garden. Emma directing while Marcus dug holes for the strawberry plants they'd bought that morning. His visits had stretched from weekends to 3-day stays, then 4. The Atlanta office provided the excuse, but they all knew the real reason he kept extending his time in Birmingham. The coffee maker beeped, and Sarah filled 2 mugs, adding cream to hers and leaving his black. Such a small detail to know about someone, yet it felt significant. These accumulated intimacies that built slowly, week by week. She carried the mugs outside, where Emma immediately abandoned gardening to dash toward the swings. "Push me, Mom. Let me give this to your dad first," Sarah called, the word dad, now flowing naturally after months of practice. Marcus accepted the coffee with a smile, dirt smudging his cheek. "Thanks. We're making progress. Emma has very specific ideas about strawberry placement. She gets that from you," Sarah teased. "I've seen your presentation slides." "Fair point." He sipped his coffee, watching as Sarah went to push Emma on the swing. The domesticity of the scene wasn't lost on either of them. This fragile family they were building from such unlikely beginnings. Later, after Emma had gone to bed exhausted from gardening and swinging and the 100 other activities she'd packed into the day, Sarah joined Marcus on the back porch. The evening air carried the scent of jasmine from the neighbor's fence. "I got a call from San Francisco today," he said, breaking their comfortable silence. "The board wants me back for a week next month. Investor meetings for the new cardiac application." "That makes sense. You're still the face of the company. I'd like you and Emma to come with me." He watched her expression carefully. "She's never seen the ocean, and you've never seen my home there." The invitation held weight beyond a simple trip. San Francisco was his world, his life before them. Taking Emma there, taking Sarah there, represented another boundary crossed, another step toward whatever they were becoming. "What would we tell Emma?" Sarah asked. "About us, I mean." The question acknowledged what had been building between them for months. The lingering glances, the conversations that stretched late into the night after Emma was asleep, the careful, almost accidental touches that grew more deliberate with time. The truth, Marcus suggested, that we're figuring things out, that families come in many forms. "And what is the truth?" Sarah pressed. "What are we doing here, Marcus?" He set his glass down, turning to face her fully. "I think we're seeing if there's a way forward that honors the past without being limited by it. I think we're discovering if what's between us now is strong enough to build upon. And if it's not, then we'll continue being the best co-parents we can be." His voice was steady. "Emma's needs come first. Always." Sarah nodded, appreciating his clarity. "She loves you, you know. Talks about you constantly when you're not here." "I love her too. More than I thought possible." He hesitated. "And I'm developing feelings for her mother that I'm trying very hard to be patient about." The direct admission hung in the evening air between them. "I am scared, Sarah confessed. Not of you exactly, but of trusting this, of believing it can last. I understand that. I haven't earned your trust yet. Not completely. You've come a long way," she acknowledged. "Further than I ever expected that day at the showcase." He laughed softly. "You certainly got my attention. That was the plan." She smiled at the memory, now transformed from painful confrontation to something they could almost joke about. "Almost. So," Marcus said after a moment, "San Francisco?" Sarah considered the invitation. Emma would love seeing the ocean, exploring a new city. And part of her was curious about Marcus's other life, the world he'd inhabited before them. Separate rooms, she stipulated. "We're not there yet." "Of course." His expression was serious, but his eyes held warmth. "No pressure. Just showing my 2 favorite people my favorite places." The phrase, "my 2 favorite people," wrapped around her heart, both comforting and terrifying in its implication. Have you ever found yourself building something beautiful from what began as pain? Discovered that the very person who once broke your heart might be the one who helps make it whole again? "Okay," she decided. "We'll come to San Francisco. But I'm warning you, Emma will want to see every tourist trap in the city. I've already made a list, he admitted. Alcatraz, Fisherman's Wharf, the sea lions at Pier 39. Sarah laughed, the sound carrying into the spring night. You've done your research. Some things are worth preparing for properly. His hand found hers on the porch railing, fingers intertwining with gentle pressure. Some people are worth getting right the second time around. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let her fingers tighten around his, a small gesture of trust, of possibility, of a future neither of them could have imagined 1 year ago. In the house behind them, Emma slept peacefully, surrounded by butterfly decals and stuffed animals. Ahead of them lay San Francisco, then summer, then all the seasons that would follow, a shared calendar slowly filling with birthday parties and school events and holidays. The life they hadn't planned, but were choosing now, one day at a time.